Hello everyone, welcome to Achievers IAS classes. Today we are here to discuss the current events on 6th December 2017. Let's start with the national issues of the day. The first issue in news today is the huge or the hefty fees charged by the lawyers, and SE has recently called for regulating such hefty fees charged by the lawyers. The Supreme Court has said that the astronomical fees charged by the lawyers due to the commercialization of the legal profession is in violation of the fundamental right of the poor to get equal access to justice. This is because neither the bar nor the judiciary has made any move in the past to regularize the fees charged by the lawyers. What is important to us from this article is the constitutional provision which guarantees free and equal justice to the poor, and that is guaranteed by the directive principle under Article 39A, which was added to the Constitution by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment, which states that the state has the responsibility to provide equal justice and free legal aid to the poor. In this regard, the Parliament has also passed the Legal Services Authority Act in the year 1987. We can expect a question either on the constitutional amendment or on the article itself. Let's move on to the next issue in news today,
which is regarding the 15th Finance Commission. I have covered in detail the constitutional provision related to the Finance Commission as well as the functions of the Finance Commission in detail in yesterday's current affairs. So kindly go through the same. Today we look into the various challenges in front of the 15th Finance Commission, which is being discussed in this particular article. As we know, the Finance Commission has the mandate to determine the net proceeds of taxes distribution between the center and states. So this article is talking about the various challenges in front of the present Finance Commission. We all know the 14th Finance Commission recommended increased devolution from the center to the state to the tune of 42% of the net proceeds of taxes. And today's article is talking about the center's intent seeking to roll back the devolution of such untied funds because of various new developments which have been undertaken by the new government, which include the rollout of goods and services tax. We know the goods and services tax is an indirect tax system replacing most of the union as well as state indirect taxes. Due to the imposition of the GST and the recent revamp of the GST system, where the items included in the highest tax bracket of 28% was modified and the number of items were reduced, resulting in decreased revenues to the union government, thereby raising concerns over the union's fiscal situation. With this in mind, the Finance Commission has the challenge to ensure adequate revenues are left with the union government for essential spending on defense, infrastructure, and many other initiatives like to combat climate change, etc. The task is further complicated as the center has also to compensate the states for any revenue loss due to the implementation of GST till 2022. We'll look into the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission in detail when it is out. With that, let's move on to the next issue, which is regarding the midterm review of the foreign trade policy 2015 to 2020. As we have seen in the earlier videos, the foreign trade policy aims to boost India's exports by value, which is currently around $450 billion to $900 billion, and thereby increase India's share in global exports. The foreign trade policy is in news because of the recent review of the same and the various changes brought in by the government. Let's just look into what are these changes. The first and the foremost important change is regarding the government's announcement of incentives to the tune of 8,450 crores to the micro, small and medium enterprises, which is no doubt to boost the exports of goods and services, but also we know that these micro, small and medium enterprises constitute the labor intensive segments in the economy, thereby increasing both employment as well as value addition to the products exported. A related article to this midterm review in today's Hindu newspaper is the demand by the Federation of Indian Export Organization, which is the apex body for the exporters in the country, to extend the incentives to all the sectors. This is because currently the incentives offered under the Merchandise Exports from India scheme, which covers the incentives offered to exports of goods from India, is applicable only to 8,000 of the approximately 12,000 tariffs applied by the government. And also, the organization is happy about the new trust-based approach adopted by the government, which is a scheme of self-ratification by the exporter or self-declaration regarding the import of raw materials. This is a significant step in boosting exports of a number of products like pharmaceuticals, chemicals, textiles, etc. And as I have already pointed out, the midterm review is aimed at not only facilitating exports but also increasing employment. And the Federation of Indian Export Organization feels that the new policy of the government or the new changes will promote the sunrise sectors of the economy along with the employment intensive segments. With that, let's move on to the next issue in news today, which is regarding the successful test fire of the Akash missile. The Akash missile is a supersonic surface to air missile. It is being developed under the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. Try to see what are the other missiles developed under this program. A similar news in today is regarding the BrahMos missile. The BrahMos missile is developed as a joint venture between India and Russia. It is a two-stage supersonic missile with a range of 290 kilometers, which has been extended now after India became the member of the Missile Technology Control Regime last year. UPSC has previously asked questions on the details of a particular missile, like the range, like if it is surface to air, surface to surface, or air to air, etc. Therefore, you should try to remember the basic details of the various missiles employed by the Indian Armed Forces. With that, let's move on to the next issue in news today, which is regarding the grant of market economy status to China at the WTO and the opposition to the same by various countries including the United States of America. The US, EU and various other nations are against granting market economy status to China because they believe China distorts market prices through the use of various state subsidies, thereby making Chinese goods cheaper, which results in the increased exports of Chinese goods and flooding of Chinese goods in the domestic markets of these countries, causing economic losses including job losses in these economies. However, China has ascertained that the domestic prices of the products manufactured in China are determined by open competition rather than under state control as accused by various developed economies like the EU, US. But a question arises, why does China need market economy status and what is the legal basis for such demand? Contained a clause under section 15 which according to China guaranteed to upgrade the country's status as a market economy automatically on completion of 15 years of its WTO membership. Till then, the major trading powers of the world could treat China as a non-market economy, and thereby these economies could ascertain the value of goods produced in China with reference to prices in a third country rather than the prices as claimed by China. This helped in countering unfair dumping of cheap Chinese goods into these economies. Now, if China is granted market economy status, then these countries which could previously impose anti-dumping measures on the Chinese economy can no longer do so, but have to accept the prices as claimed by China. The solution to resolving the issue is contained in the protocol of Chinese accession to WTO itself under Section 15, which places the onus on Chinese firms to prove that the products produced were under the conditions of a competitive market economy rather than under the influence of the state. If they fail to do so, the importing countries are entitled to invoke the rules applicable to a non-market economy, thereby imposing anti-dumping measures. The clause also talks about granting market economy status to specific industrial sectors rather than the entire economy. Apart from the legal safeguards, several nations in the WTO have supported the Chinese argument in return for bilateral cooperation in trade and investment in infrastructure projects. However, the stand taken by the US government can delay the grant of market economy status. With that, let's move on to the next issue in news today, which is regarding the recent cautions issued by the RBI on the use of Bitcoin. We all know the value of Bitcoin touched 10,000 US dollars in the previous week. I have discussed in detail the reasons for such hike in the price of Bitcoins, the risks involved, and the use of Bitcoin as an alternative currency in my previous news analysis videos. I request those who have not watched the video to go through the same. The other issue in news today includes the threat of Cyclone Oki in Gujarat and the damage caused by it in Goa. I have covered the details of Cyclone Oki, the method involved in its nomenclature in detail in the previous video. The question on naming a cyclone has been already asked in UPSC, and I request you to kindly go through the same. With that, we'll wrap up today's session. Thank you. Have a nice day.